It's all been rebooted. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's never been that bad. It's not my internet. Leonard, Acones 96. Hopefully, around like you guys. Can you guys see me perfectly fine? Somebody chime in and tell me. Or am I all blurred and gibbled? Oh, there's the SoCal Family Guy. How are you, man? You guys are killing it with Messenbrook. I like your Snake Charmer one, by the way. All right, round two. Anyway, yeah, I can. Well, it's gonna sound stupid, but I can see myself fine too. As soon as Dennis shows up, it all goes sideways. I'm trying to accept you, Dennis. Maybe it takes a minute for my phone to uh, heat up. Dee, 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 dee. Feel like I should like juggle or something. Yep. Send request. Accepting the request. Says you're unable to join. What the? Let me try it. Invite you, and if it doesn't work, I will shut it off and try it again. Can you see my request to? Oh, what to do it? You moved.
I moved. Let's see if this is better.
There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Awesome. Man, that sucked.
Listen, if it's the fact that you moved, it's all. I'm just gonna say it out there. It's all your fault, man.
That's true. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, well, since that, I mean, the quality was terrible, but why don't you do a quick, I don't know,
Okay.
5 minute
Yep.
recap of what we did? Why don't you go through the line items,
Okay.
give the total, and then we'll sort of go from there.
Perfect. So what Bob and I did was we worked through our annual numbers, like what's everything cost per year. Um, and so there's a couple things. So I call this my one-man shop exercise. And my requirements are you have to have a shop because most people can't work out of their house for long or they're going to get in trouble. You have to have an office person. Even if it's your wife or girlfriend, you should pay her a real wage. Um, and you have to buy a truck. Um, and you have to have an apprentice. I believe that a plumber needs to have an apprentice. That's the only way we grow plumbers. So, um, and the thing is, you could say, a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to use my truck I've got now. But the problem is, if you don't put the new truck that you want in your budget, you'll never have the money to buy it.
Yeah.
And so that's something a lot of guys get stuck on. So we're going to write down real numbers about what we really want. So what we came up with, we rented a shop. It's going to cost $3,000 a month, so that's 36,000 a year. We're going to pay ourselves 110,000, and so we talked about if you're not making that, like if you can't make it rain at the shop that you're at, you probably shouldn't even try starting a business yet. You need to get better at sales. But we're paying ourselves 110 grand. We put 100 grand for our truck. We have to wrap it, otherwise it's a white truck, and a white truck's a molester truck. So 4 grand for a wrap, $22,000 for a shelving system with whatever you do, whether it's Milwaukee or a shelving system. It's 22,000. Stock, we settled on $15,000 in stock. We figured out our gas. That was $20,000 for a year of gas. We put down $20,000 for tools. We're assuming we've got some of our own tools already. Um,
My
You
only
got
caveat to that, Dennis,
yeah.
which I know didn't got blurred out, is unless you're an influencer, then all that stuff comes to you for free.
Can't leave that out. Yeah. And then I said at least the Milwaukee stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and we have to. I love influencers, so we'll have to talk another day about that. But I hear you, but I like influencers anyway. Um, Maintenance on the truck. We got brakes, probably a set of winter tires, a couple
Yeah.
oil changes. We figured $5,000 for that.
Yep.
Our truck insurance was $9,000. We paid our office person 50,000. We paid our apprentice 60,000. Uniforms $1,500. Cell phone system. We have three people: the person in the office, ourselves, and our apprentice. 15,000. You're using Canvas for your dispatching pricing book, so that was 3,000. Health insurance, we figured 15,000. Um, Office furniture to stock up our office, like a couple computers, a couple desks. It stacks up, so we had 30,000 for that. Our liability insurance was 24,000. Scooby snacks, like what these guys don't realize, they're stopping to get smokes or chews or 5 hour energies or Red Bulls. Um, I say if I leave my apprentice in the ditch digging the water lines and I go do a service call and come back, I'm going to come back with lunch, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that adds up. So we figured 6,000 for Scooby snacks. Um, I call it material shrinkage. You call it something else.
I
Um,
called it. What did I call? What did I call it?
yeah, material. Okay.
Describe your material shrinkage, and then I'll remember.
Yeah, your apprentice is installing the toilet and he tightens it one too tight and he
Oh yeah.
snaps the porcelain, right? Or
F ups.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, f ups, whatever. He roughs in the bathroom lab and it's all wrong. You got to tear it out and redo it, or whatever.
Yeah.
That adds up. That kind of stuff adds up. And when you're not working for yourself, you just throw it in the can and go grab another one and keep going. But this stuff adds up. So we put 5,000 for that. Complaint resolution. You did everything right, but the lady calls up and she's upset about some stupid thing,
Yeah. No, that's what
and she's going to
I
write
called bad debt. Right.
bad debt. Yeah,
That's what
I call it
called
complaint
it.
resolution.
Yeah.
But this is the thing is we know what's going to happen. Well, I wanted to share one thing about this. That changed our lives. That putting that in the budget changed our lives because we did really good work when we were time material, and so the work's done, and they owe us, and they're not going to pay. We go to small claims court, and we win every time. But you just totally lose your attitude, right? You're all pissed off. You do all this paperwork. You got to go to court. Even when you win in court, it's a slam dunk. There's 30 people in the courtroom glaring at you, thinking that you're an evil contractor,
Yeah.
and
It's a
it
bad
just
look.
sucked. And then you don't feel like working the rest of the day. So I love putting that in the budget, and so I've got 5,000. I don't know who I'm going to pay it to, but I'm going to pay it to somebody. And so when someone calls, I'm like, oh, you're the person I'm going to pay. I've got money in the budget to pay you. Let's just make this right. $200, $500, and let's move on. So I
Yeah.
love having a budget for complaints.
And so, what was your
Um,
percentage of that? Like, what did you? You must have like.
oh,
I don't. What was your budget item for that?
so check
Like,
this out. I
go
I
ahead.
gave back whatever they wanted, and it never exceeded 1%.
There you go.
Because we did good work. But
Yeah.
like people that, but I would defend ourselves. And I would say this is why the price is what it is, and we did things right. But I want you to be happy. What's it going to make you happy? And every once in a while, there was a real a-hole where they wanted the whole thing redone or whatever. And of course, I would try not to do that. But there were a couple times where I had to do some unreasonable stuff. But
Yeah.
it never exceeded 1%.
Yeah.
So
Well,
um,
our number was 2%. I'm like, if it's over 2, then we have serious issues. You know what I mean?
yes, you do, 100%.
Yeah. Like we are doing stupid things if we're over 2%. You're spinning. I can
Okay.
totally hear you though.
Okay. I'll just keep going.
We'll just
Then miscellaneous.
pretend you're like the voice of God. Go for it, Dennis.
Okay. Thou shalt charge. No.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a miscellaneous of 25,000 because even in our home budgets, we never get it right. Like even so, in business, it's going to be a multiple of that. So we got 25 grand. So then we figured out it ends up being $596,000, and so that's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
but then the key point is, if you did all of this perfectly and you got all this right, and you actually sold $596,000, how much money would be in the bank? And the answer is zero, because there's no profit.
Yeah.
So we figured 30% profit, which is super admirable and achievable when you're a small company taking care of your own stuff.
Yeah.
When you get bigger, like we had, 20, 25 trucks, you're you're a rock star if you hit 20%.
I agree. And that was sort of where we ended, right? Where I'm like, listen, I understand your point of view of 20 as a sole proprietor or with a really tight ship. I think it's not unreasonable that you're between 30 and 35%.
Yeah.
That's what you need to zero in on, because like you said, everybody, I'm going to use, some words.
Yeah.
Everybody has delusions of grandeur that I'm going to run a 20-man company.
Yes.
Not everybody's cut out for that, but you should still have the capital to make that happen if you want.
Yes. Yes.
Or to try it, to swing at it. You know what I mean?
If you're taking on the risk of running your own company and all that, you deserve it.
I agree.
You deserve it. Yeah. And so, like, I hear a lot of plumbers, bragging about how good they are. And they are good. Yep. And they deserve to get paid well. And I think, here's what I noticed when I came into the industry. This is what I noticed all the time. You'd say, I paid $2,500 for a water heater, and the plumber will say, "Oh, you got ripped off. I would have done it for $2,000." It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You should ask, "Wow, you got $2,500 for a water heater? How'd you do that?" Like, I want to do that too.
How do I get 3?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's the question you should be asking. How do I get 3?
But in this industry, it seems like a lot of trades guys tear each other down and say, "You ripped them off. I would have done it for cheaper." And that's the wrong attitude, in my opinion.
Listen. If you watch, you see it every day on Instagram. We are our own worst enemies, right? Like, we're sort of the crabs in the bucket of, yes. Oh, you're doing better than me, I'm going to pull you down. And, I certainly get accused of that when I sort of roast the influencers, which is fine. I'm happy to take that criticism. Yeah. But, when it comes to money, and that's my point, is that the trade world is shrinking. Like, what is the number in Canada? It's like for every 30 dudes that retire, like 6 come on board. So the numbers are catastrophic.
Yes.
From a supply and demand point of view, which is in everybody's favor.
Yes.
I read some projections, a couple weeks ago, and they expect that the average trade guy, and they were lumping them all together, you know what I mean? Pick all of them. Well, by 20 years from now, which isn't that far,
nope.
Because time flies, that you will make somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000 a year.
Yes.
If you're good at what you do.
Yes.
Now, also realize that the cost of living is going to increase. So you're not, it doesn't come without some, cons to that. But if you're good at what you do and put in, like I've said 10,000 times on this thing, put in the time to get the skills, the knowledge, and experience, the world is your oyster. And you should, like you're saying, you should charge appropriately.
Yes.
Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think we undersell ourselves. And I did for the first couple of years as well. I was sort of grateful to have a job, grateful that somebody would invite me into their home
Yeah.
to fix something.
Yeah.
Or even better, an established business that had, whatever, 9 restaurants in the town said, Bob, we want to use you. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I legitimately know plumbers that work for beer and steak sandwiches.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, if I come and fix your drain, I'm staying for lunch, and they're like, perfect. That drain just cost me like $16 because that's all that beer and steak sandwich cost me.
And what they're doing is they're destroying the market. Like,
I agree with you.
You should figure out, if you're going to go in business, this is serious stuff. If you're going to go in business, then do this exercise and figure out what it really costs. And then what we talked about, our next video, we'll get together. We'll talk about, okay, we're going to come up with this number. Then we'll talk about, okay, how to get that, right? And you and I both have different methods about getting it. But
but it's the same, like you say, we both end up in the same spot. You know what I mean? Like you take this path. Dennis, how are you? And you're like, hey, Bob, how'd you end up here? I'm like, because we're doing the same thing. And you're right. You made a comment on it one of your stories the other day. Like my market is different than yours. My customer base is different than yours. And so I have to tailor it to my customer base.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're like, how much to fix this sink? If I told them straight up, how much to fix this sink? Well, do you want what 5? I'm going to make fun of you just a tiny bit, Dennis.
Sure, go ahead.
In my world, if I show up at the and they say we need this, we have a plug toilet. I'm like, which 5 options would you like? Would you like me to fix it? Would you like me to sort it? I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? They're like, just get your ass in here and fix it. I'm like, perfect. Our minimum is 2.5 hours. We're going to charge for every tool that we use, blah, 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 blah. And they're delighted because they know exactly what they're getting. Because as a restaurant, when you get the bill, it's itemized, right?
Yes.
Did you add guacamole to your thing? Yes, that's $3 extra. So they understand that model, which is kind of the reason I use it, because they understand what it means.
Yeah.
And same with the hotels and all the sort of hospitality stuff that we deal with is very much just itemized. From the hotel point of view, you rented Debbie Does Dallas. That's an extra $69. No pun intended. You know what I mean? I apologize for that one, but that just came to my head. Yeah. But if you ordered room service, they're like, oh, you ordered room service or you checked out a pay-per-view, here's your bill, sir. And your turn down service was this much, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my world very much understands that. Your world wants what's the price?
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that was what I was trying to illustrate was you have to figure out what your angle is. Are you going after commercial service? Because there's some tremendous benefits that you're experiencing in doing commercial service. And that's what my Zoom Drain company did. My Zoom Drain company, we went after commercial service work. But my Gene Johnson Plumbing and Heating, we were after residential service work. And it's 2 different animals altogether.
Yeah.
So
totally.
The customer thinks completely different.
Yeah. And so, like you say, part of our commercial service, and it's no different than it's not any different. When we go and change a pump, in the residential world, that pump costs $300 to $500. In my world, that pump costs anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000, depending on what it is, right? And my customer wants to know what am I paying for that pump? This much. Holy F. That's right. And here's our maintenance package, which is flat rate pricing, basically, to make sure that pump lasts you 10 years without breaking a sweat. So they're like, sign me up, Bob. We're going to pay you $400 a month to make sure that our pumps, that we come in and do our 99-point inspection type of thing.
Right. Right.
So
100%.
there's a million, and that's the beautiful thing about the trade. It's what I love so much about it is there's a million ways to skin that cat. And unfortunately, most of my fellow tradesmen and women leave so much meat on that cat that, and they think, oh, I'm doing great. I'm like, dude, like there's so much more there. So much more.
Yes.
Right?
And they deserve it.
And you deserve it all.
Yes.
I don't know if I shared that with you, but without going too crazy, when I took over from my father, and it was sudden because my father passed away, his rate was $35 an hour, and he would not charge any more than that. And within a month of me sort of inheriting his customer base, we immediately changed it to $85 an hour, and within 6 months, lost every single one of those customers.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you're discrediting your father's name. I'm like, no, my father worked his ass to the bone every day and complained about nothing but money. I am not going to do the same thing.
Yes.
So you can use me, I can fix it, but this is the price. And that's, spinned us off into doing different things because you got to find a different group of people to work for.
Yep. 100%. Yes.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. And so many people, it seems like so many guys start the business by just while we're here, I think one of the reasons people start their own business is because they're at a company that's not run well, and they see there's no growth, and so they're like, well, the son's going to take over, and he's going to be the service manager, and so if I want to go up or get out of a truck someday, I'm going to have to go do this on my own.
Yep.
And instead of doing this exercise, they figure out what their boss is charging, and they charge a little bit less and think they're going to get the market. Right?
For a fact, and they can admit it in here or not, but they phone 6 of their competitors and say how much to change a hot water tank, how much to unplug a toilet, how much to change a set of taps, and they get the number and they write it all down and they take 10% off and say, that's my price. I'm like, you'll be done in a year.
Yes.
Like you won't make it to tax filing season because you're going to be out of business by the time you have to file taxes. And then you realize that you owe the government, $40,000 on top of making zero money.
Yes. That's why this is so important.
It's like so important.
I'll do it with anybody because these plumbers deserve to do well. They work hard. They're super smart. They're hardworking. They're dedicated, and they deserve better. So,
and that, our message is the same. I've certainly taken a different angle of it.
Yeah.
By sort of, teasing the influencers of the world, saying, dude, you're like, the reason that you have to influence is because you can't run your company and you need the extra money. The reason that you have to influence and ask for free tools is because you can't buy them. And that rubs people the wrong way, but it's true.
I think it can be true. I think it can be true. That's another video.
Like there are guys that do it very well, but most of the guys, and I guess that sort of becomes a heritage thing. The guys that I respect are the guys that have run their own business, that are successful, that don't need it. Like if you want to send me some free stuff and I'll give you a review on it, then sure, I'm down. But it's the guys that sort of chase it and say, you should use me as your rep to, sell your stuff. I'm like, man, I think that's you're spending time and money where you should spend it elsewhere, and it would be far more rewarding if you sat down and did your little, one-man show routine and figured out what exactly that needs to be.
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to reverse it and figure out your hourly rate?
Yeah. So how many hours a year are we going to work?
Well, I'll tell you how I do it. I don't remember that number anymore because it's been too long since I've done it. But the most you can work in a week, in a month, is at the very most is 25 days. Most of it's 23. So you don't get to
Yes.
use 30. You don't get to use 30 days. So throw that out. And the most you can work in those 28 or those 23 days is, if you want to kill yourself, it's 10 hours a day. So that's 230 hours a month. That's, so that's 2,500 hours basically a year. Does that
3
work out?
times 12, 2760.
So we'll say 28. If you put in a couple overtimes because you're a super go getter, we'll give you 2,800 hours.
2800. Okay. So we take 700. So we've got our profit of seven. So our cost was 596,000.
Yeah.
We're shooting for a 30% profit because we're a small, tight shop.
Yeah.
We're going to have $179,000 profit in the bank if we make this all work. So we're going to sell $775,000. So we take $775,000 and we divide it by 2,800.
What's the Jeopardy music?
Do, 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 do. Yeah.
What's the number?
Divided by 2,800 is 276.78. That's $276.78 for every single hour you're working.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's your hourly rate, but your billable hour. So I'm kind of teaching the guys that may not understand this. So your billable hours, how many hours you're actually turning the wrenches. So what percentage of your hours are you actually working on plumbing, not driving to the parts store, not driving to the customer, not talking to the customer, not doing bills?
60% at best.
That a rock star at 60%.
I
Yeah,
agree.
rock star.
Yeah.
So for math, let's just call it 50%
Sure.
to make it easier.
Yeah.
So that would mean that 775,000 divided by 1,400 would be it's basically going to be 276. 276 times 2 is 552. So now this is what I illustrate to my guys, because I once lost a really good guy because so we're service and his best friend was working at a new construction company. And so the new construction company was charging half our price, an hourly
Yeah.
price. And he just felt like we were ripping everybody off. And I back then I couldn't explain this to him, but now this is the explanation. The new construction company, they pull up, they hop out of the truck, they clock in, they work till lunch, they take a 30-minute break or whatever, or don't break, and they go home at 4 o'clock. So they work the whole day. Where my
In one
service guys got
spot.
to in one spot. So they're
Yeah.
100% efficient. Where the service guy's got to drive stuck in traffic, his first call might take him an hour and a half to get there
Yep.
in Seattle, right? And
Yep.
so in Seattle, we're lucky to be 40% efficient is a really strong number in service in Seattle. That's why we get to 2.3 calls a day,
There you go.
because traffic is just a disaster in Seattle. So we're in traffic a lot. So anyway, so the new construction guy he charges $276 an hour, but he works a solid 8 hours a day. And the service guy is charging $552 a build hour. So he's only, let's say he bills out 4 build hours a day. And the new construction guy works 8 hours a day. But in the end, they both make the same amount per day.
Same amount of money. Yeah.
Which is going to be 552 times 4. 552 times 4 equals 2208. So both trucks, whether you're service or whether you're commercial or residential service, the new construction guy's getting 2208 and the service guy's getting 2208, but they go to the market with different hourly rates. Does that make
Yep,
sense?
totally. But that's now
So
the only caveat to that, or the only explanation of that, is that's what they're billing for the company. That's not what they're taking. That's not what they're being paid.
yes,
Right.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
And if your rules are the same as ours, like when as soon as my dude shows up, even if I said, you know what, I don't like you, turn around and go home, I have to pay him 3.5 hours because he showed up at work.
really.
Yep, that's the Canadian government for you.
I'm proud to be
And
an American
so,
today.
so those are factored in to sort of my rates. Now,
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often because we're busy and blah 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 blah. But that it is a something that we need to be aware of. That even
yeah,
if they showed up and did an hour call, which is how we work it, right? If they show up and do an hour and a half call, as I've said before, my to ring the doorbell is $475, right? And so I'm there, and he plunges the toilet and says, "I'm not feeling well," and goes home. I have to pay him 3.5 hours for that day, which basically means I broke even. Well, I
yeah.
lost money because I got to pay for the truck, the gas, the insurance, and if you put in all your sort of variable costs that we talked about in the first part, then I probably lost $100 on that day if he shows up and leaves right away.
Yeah.
But that's how we work it. Is it's similar. Like I want 6 to 8 calls. I want to bill somewhere between, like you said, 25 to $4 grand per truck per day, and at the end of the week, everybody's sort of billed out 100 grand type of thing, and we're off to the races. And
Right.
that's the metrics that we use in our little world to make sure that everything's on point. Which, like we talked about, I don't know if we talked about it in the first hour of this one, because I'm small, and that's what I would expect out of the one man shop. Because you're smaller, and if you actually know what you're doing, then you're far more agile than Dennis's 25 man company. Because Dennis doesn't know about the problems until, at least a
Tomorrow.
day or two, maybe a week, maybe a month, where he looks at his, whatever his material costs were, and what did you call it? Your material shrinkage at the end of the
Yeah,
month. You're like, why are we at $10,000 in material shrinkage? Oh, wow, you
yeah.
didn't hear about Johnny? Oh yeah,
Ex-
he blah blah blah. You're like, holy crap!
exactly.
Because you're small, and because I'm small, like I said in the previous little chat, I know that within an hour. I'm like,
Yes.
Johnny did what? Okay,
Yes.
well, I'm phoning Johnny right now, and we're having a come to Jesus meeting, and then we're figuring out how we're going to, rectify it and make sure the customer's happy, and if I can still make some money, great. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
very, I guess the word is reactive to what's happening. Which, if you're, and most of the guys that are on here, as you know, are one man shows.
Yes.
You should know that. The second you torque that, you use the toilet, the second you torque that nut, one nut too tight, and you crack it, that you're about to experience material shrinkage.
Shrinkage. Exactly. And it's in your budget, and if it's not in your budget, it comes out of your profit. But if it's in your
Yeah,
budget, you've got a budget for it.
yeah.
None of
If
us are
you,
perfect. We all make mistakes.
yeah, no, there, like you say, there's all sorts of, uh, uh, because there's so many variables. There's a million ways to make mistakes and to screw it up and to lose money. And so,
Yeah.
like you said, and like I say, you've got to build that buffer in because nobody's perfect. And you've got to make, people think that isn't my number. My number's better than that. But if at the end of the year I have $180,000 of cash, people are like, wow, what are you going to do? I'm like, I've got to buy a new drain cleaning machine for $10,000. I want to buy a new camera for $20,000. My truck, I got to buy a new truck. That's, like we said, 80 to 100 grand right there. I, I just bought 3 things and all I have left is 30K. What am I going to do with
Yes.
30K? Well, I'm going to put it in the
Hold
bank
on to
and
it. Yeah.
hold on to it for something else that breaks.
Yeah.
That's the message of what I'm trying to get at, and what you're getting at is that like money, as much as you hate to say it, money is the ruler of this world. And if you don't have any of it, then you got problems. If you
Yeah.
have too much of it, you got problems.
Yeah.
So you need to learn how to handle it so that you
Yeah.
can be successful, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what else
Um,
to say.
one thing I love about profit, I heard this phrase and it really, like we were doing a lot of things right, but we were not predictably profitable. And this guy this guy said on the other side of profit is fun. And
Yep.
we really want to have a good time, right? And but most of this is a grind. And so like for like 15 years, it was a grind until we got enough things right where it really took off,
It
right? Like
is.
we're doing a lot of things right, but it was a grind.
And I, I don't, and you can correct me if you think this is different, but I don't think that anybody is excluded from that timeline. You may make it 8 to 10 years before you figure out all your shit and start, you know what I mean? Figuring out your market, who you want to work for, who's this, who's that. I've done it, and I'll do it here. Like I openly mock the people that say I've been in business for 2 years. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, dude, you don't know shit. You don't know your ass from your elbow.
There's so
Let me.
much coming down.
What is your hourly cost? Oh, I don't know. Exactly.
Yeah,
Right? Have you
yeah,
you know have you had an audit where the government disallowed a bunch of stuff? Let me know how that goes for you. And they did send you another bill. Like there's a million
yeah,
ways, and it does.
yeah,
It takes time. Like there's no way to rush it. You just don't get to say I'm here and I'm good.
yeah,
It's like cheese and wine, man. It takes some time to age for it to be good.
yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
One thing I loved about profit is one thing that turned me inside out was when it was slow, I, I had time before we were profitable for 15 years. Um, when it was slow, I would have time to train, but we'd send everybody home because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
couldn't afford the labor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
it drove me crazy. And so what I loved about being profitable was, hey, if it's a slow day and we've had some issues with some tankless water heater model, hey, let's have four guys come in into the shop. We built a big lab and we could
Yeah.
have an impromptu training. If four guys are sitting around, they don't have a call till 10 o'clock. Hey, let's go in the lab and train
Yeah.
on the clock.
Yeah.
Like let's go.
You're getting
And that
paid to
was,
learn. It's a beautiful
yes.
thing.
And then they're appreciative and then they like working for me because I'm paying them, even though they don't have a call, but I'm teaching them. So it's going to make me more money in the future.
Yeah.
And, but that only came after we were profitable. And so that was true. Like what comes after profit is fun.
Yeah.
We became a fun place to work once we had the balls to charge what we needed to charge to be profitable, right?
And I don't think there's a better word to say it. Everybody talks the big game. Every time I bring up what our rates are, people lose their minds and say, "Are you crazy? There's no way that would fly here." I'm like, "Yes, it would." I live in, you know, a fairly large city in the middle of Alberta. Like we are not some, $1 billion. We're not Saudi Arabia. We're not Dubai. You know what I mean? Like my physics and my economics aren't any different than yours. You just got to find out what works for you to get to those numbers. Whether, like you say, whether it's your 20% or my 35%, you got to, like, if you're in your first year, I absolutely think 35 is insane. But you should be shooting for your 20. And if you
100%.
hit 18, then what did you do wrong? Why are you 2% short? What did you do wrong? And how do I get to 24 next year?
Yep.
Is what you have to do.
Yep. And that's why that's one of the reasons we love Service Titan. We ran when we found Service Titan, we were an early adopter of Service Titan. We were in I think the second year. Um, but it gave us all the information. So then like we run our company off of the numbers. It's not
Yep.
emotion. And so like I was consulting with another company and they didn't have of their numbers. And then I just said, I don't know what to say. I don't know what lever to even talk to you about because I don't know what your conversion rate is. I don't know how many tasks per call. I don't know how efficient you are. So we love Service Titan because it gave us enough data. And it is, yes, I understand some people feel it's a little cumbersome, but it gives you the data to know what to work on in your company,
Yeah.
especially when you get bigger.
So
Um,
yeah, my only comment to that, as you know, I've sort of, you know, said disparaging things about those guys. Um,
yeah,
Only because they're not a. I think they're a fit if you have more than 8 people. If you have less
yeah,
than 8 people, I would don't waste your time and dig into what you just did, because those numbers that you just did will provide you 80% of what your numbers need to be, right? I mean, they
yes,
may not break it down into little circle pie graphs, like, or, bar graphs, or, stem diagrams like Service Titan does. But if those graphs don't mean anything unless you already understand it up here. And
yeah,
so if you're a one-man show and you don't know anything that we're talking about, then you need to either get into a business class and just understand some basic accounting of what credit, debit, what some figure out what you should know where your money goes, pull your bank statement and say, what am I spending money on? And
yeah,
do the gross like we did. You're 500 and we'll say $600,000, and you want to make so much money at it. You want to make 110 on top of that. All right, so it's $710,000. Reverse it with your 23 hours in a month, and figure. I mean, who knows? I guarantee you. Uh, I, I don't know what percentage. I'm going to say many, not most, but many, many contractors have no idea what those numbers are. Not a
no, they
clue.
don't. No, 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 not at all.
And so all they look at is, I made $5,000 today. Yeah, what did you spend? Well, I only spent, $2,800. Yeah, that's what you spent on your fixed cost of material. How much did your gas cost? How much is your insurance costing? How much is your WCP costing? What is your tax in there? What are your, like you said, what is your health insurance? What happens if you get hurt? All that sort of,
Right.
what's your material shrinkage or your bad debt of, dealing with unreasonable people?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing to have somebody complain. I've done it myself. Have people complain, you're charging too much. I'm like, what should it be, sir? You know what? It should be half. Fine, pay me that. Oh, seriously? Yeah, pay me that. They pay it, never call me again.
I've done that. I've done that several times. It's like, I will give you back all of that, but you have to make one promise that you never call
Yeah,
me again.
never call me
And they
again.
go,
And when you're,
deal. And I go,
yep.
perfect. What's your address? And I run out of text.
So somebody's asking
Um,
here, what is the proper material markup for material? So that's a super, I guess, a broad statement. Mine is you need to make 55% margin. And if you don't know what 55% margin is over 55% markup, then you got
yeah,
some Googling to do. You'll learn that answer in 5 minutes. There's a mil. I don't need to say anything more because there's a million people that say it far better than I do in
yeah,
YouTube videos and little training things. You got to get 55% margin. That's what I
yeah.
want.
We go for 60. Yeah,
All right. Oh,
60%
there you go.
margin. Yeah. So here's
Yeah.
a little cheat that someone can do. Like, you got to do this exercise. But another way just to check it is you figure out what you want to make. So in our exercise, we said we're going to make 110,000, and our apprentice is going to make 60. So that's $170,000 in labor. If you times that by 5, that will put your labor at 20%, and that will give you that puts us at 850,000 as our sales goal.
Yeah.
So that's just another little quick, like if someone's running around trying to figure stuff out really quick, if you just take what you're going to pay yourself and your apprentice, times that by 5, that should be about where you're going if you want and you should not have your your field labor be more than 20%. So that's another little
Yeah.
way to kind of check yourself.
Yeah. And it's not a criticism, but like you should dig into those numbers. Like, what else are you doing on Friday night, Saturday night? Like, if you're own your own business and you're going to the bar or you're going to watch the hockey game, like, dude, what's that thing? Like, there's been a million memes about it. If you literally take a year off from socializing and dig into your business and learn, in the whatever we've spent 90 minutes chatting and understand what you're talking about, it'll change your whole life.
Yeah.
Your whole life. And then, like you say, once you're profitable, then the fun begins. Listen, I'm making tons of money. Let's go to a hockey game. It's on me. Let's
Yes.
let's go to the bar. Beer's on me. Whatever you want to do, like it just changes your whole
Yeah.
perception of life. Somebody's
That's my
saying
biggest pet
something again.
peeve. My biggest pet peeve is a one-man shop with no apprentice. It's
Listen, I
like,
agree with you. We do
what,
talk about all the time. We can pick on the troll clothing people. Like, you pay me for my time, my experience. What are you doing to contribute to this trade? Like, are you just taking from it endlessly? Is it only here to serve you, or are you looking down the road a decade and maybe helping some people out on the way? If you can figure out your number, if you take the year off and just focus on you, I promise you, you will be able to hire an apprentice in year 2. I promise you that,
yes,
and
yes,
probably 2, because you'll have your numbers so locked in that you'll understand when I say what what are your what is your minimum call out rate? What is your minimum whatever? If you want to use Dennis's model, what are your 5 options that you're giving your customer base when
right,
you show up to do a job?
right.
People are like, there are 5. I'm like, there certainly can be,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah,
That's what happens when you. No, if you go down to buy a drill at Home Depot, there's 5 options. You can get a Black and Decker or a Milwaukee or a DeWalt or a Ryobi or
yeah,
a
right. Ryobi,
Rigid.
like, yeah. How
Like,
many different ones do you want? And they all have a different price.
yeah, and you go to get a vacuum cleaner at the grocery at the whatever store, and there's 5 or 6 vacuum cleaners there. Like, who are we to say? Again, you're in commercial service, it's different, but in residential, and we're kind of getting into the sales process. I think we should have another talk
No, I
about
agree.
the sales process. But
As long as
but
long
yeah,
as you as long as you go to, like, what you were in the basement, now you're on the main floor, yes, in
yeah,
your house. So as long as you go to the upper level, and then we'll have no problem at all because it's closer to Jesus or something up there where the internet actually works.
it is raining cats and dogs in Seattle, so maybe that's the problem. I
Isn't
don't
it
know.
always raining cats and dogs in there?
No, it drizzles a lot. It doesn't. It rained hard today.
No,
It usually just drizzles.
yeah.
Yeah, this
So
just
Buddy is like, who's working for $110,000 a year?
yeah,
Listen,
not many.
make your number. You want to earn 300K next year? Then bill it appropriately and find the people that will pay you that, because they're out there.
Everywhere.
They're out there.
Yeah,
And the people that say you can't do that are, are chicken shits. I don't know what else to say.
right.
They're what I call, the feeble fake people that say they're a tradesman but won't bill it because they don't
Yeah,
believe in themselves enough to be bold enough to make those sort of claims.
yeah,
And
yeah.
expect that respect. I think there's my new saying, Dennis.
What
Expect
is it?
that respect.
I like it. Expect
Write
respect.
that down.
Expect respect.
Yeah, you should.
I agree.
And the problem with the trade numbers is a 20-year problem. The people coming into the trade right now, that will be their reality. And maybe the governments fix it. Maybe people get into the trades, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think, as I've said with most governments, they're all about optics and not about outcome,
Yeah,
which is proved when they're like, and this will be a bit controversial, we're going to give money to the minorities and the women. I'm like, dude, that is 4% of the market, 4%,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you're not gonna give any incentives to, you know, the white men. All right, well, that's where the trade are not, just men in general.
Yeah.
Um, why aren't you doing that? Because that's what we need. You're ignoring 96% of the problem to, you know, provide the optics that you're helping out minorities and women. And
Yeah.
that's not disrespectful to any of those. Please come and be a part of it and join the ranks and give it all you can, and it'll reward you greatly. But as I've said it before and got a lot of freaking criticism for it, women will not save this trade problem. They won't. They're not
No,
going to.
no,
They're not going to change anything. Like
no.
they're
It's
not the
too. It's too
solution.
big.
Yeah.
It's too big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hills Plumbing here says, I will hire an apprentice when the government makes them stay for a determined amount of time. So I 100% disagree. And here's the
I knew
question.
you would.
So how many times did Babe Ruth hit the ball? What percentage of time?
Oh, what was his? I don't know.
Like
I'm going to guess
30,
like I was going to say
30%?
33%. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's part of the game. And like, um, I hired apprentices and some worked out and some didn't. But if 3 out of 10 do and they stay and you train them well, my company, we ended up, our best people were the people that we hired as apprentices and built them up. And then what our training systems, when they saw what we were turning out, it attracted good plumbers that wanted to be a part of that, that
Yeah.
wanted to teach. And
Yeah.
so you've got to do that. And yes, it's going to suck. Some are going to suck. Some aren't going to work out.
People
But
are people. There's no
just like
way.
Babe Ruth,
Yeah. I agree.
3 out of 10. Get 3 out of 10, and you'll build a beautiful business faster than trying to steal them from each other. Like who wants
Well,
to?
no, I agree. No, and you will learn a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you'll find out how you treated people badly, or
Yes.
how you weren't very good with people skills or communication, or you're too hard on people, or you're too mean, or whatever the case may be. You're like, oh, I need to change my approach up a little bit if I want to be better at which is what it is. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
all your problems are your own. And the second you can figure that out and go, yeah, every problem I have in my life is my fault. Right.
Yes.
100% is. And unless I'm willing to change some behavior or learn some new skills or work on some, personality defects, then my life is going to be what it is. Like
Yeah.
there's no getting away from it, right? Because
That's
I'm in my space all the time.
yes. I think the reason it's so hard is because like there's not a cookie cutter. There's some recipes, but then we put ourselves in the mix, and then
Yeah,
we have to figure out ourselves in that recipe, and it takes us 10 or 15 years to figure that out for most of us.
yeah.
It just does.
No, yeah. It's like you say there, and that's you look at the people that sell systems and say this will work for you. I'm like, will it? I mean, I'll take what's good and what does work and throw out the rest
Yeah.
because my life is completely different than yours, Dennis. My
Yeah.
experience is completely different than yours. And I
Totally.
have a different skill set than yours, and that's what makes the whole world go around. Is that you need to take your unique qualities and figure out how to accentuate them into being a successful human being and a
Yeah.
successful businessman. And that,
Right. Bring value to the marketplace, and
yeah, and
yeah.
that takes time and effort. Like it's no different than anything else you want to do in this. You want to be a good cyclist. You want to be, build a body that's, whatever that you don't get to go in 30 days and come out going, listen, I'm ready to take the Tour de France or compete in something. It takes years and years and years.
Years and years and years. Yeah,
And
for
and,
sure.
and building the business is no different, I don't think.
Yeah. I got a quick question for you.
Mm.
Do you think there'll always be big companies, or do you think we're going to go back to lots of small
I
companies?
was talking to a guy about that the other day, and I think you're part of that uh, trend, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a lot of sort of private investment firms that are looking to buy into trades because they're
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
profitable,
Yes.
and they are focused on um, sales, not necessarily training. They're about like lots of those investment firms want, they're there to make money.
Right.
I do think that the consumer is sort of figuring that out and it's kind of like the box stores that were super popular back then. And I don't know how it's happening in the States, but up here, those box stores are starting to shutter because nobody's going to them anymore, because they have so much overhead. They both of them will absolutely exist, but I do think the smaller business, which is exactly what I said to you, is more agile and more responsive and more reactive than you could ever be, just
Yeah.
because it's tighter and I can manage my customer base way more effectively than you can. Like, I know the names of all of my customers, right?
Right.
I've got a Rolodex of 5,000 people in my head, and I know them all, and I've had
Yeah.
experiences with them all. And so that level of connection doesn't exist in a bigger company
Yeah.
where you have a new tech shows up every day. Like, the boys have been in it long enough now that they get requested. Can you
That's
send Isaiah? I
awesome.
would love to see Isaiah. Sure.
Yeah.
We'll make sure Tuesday at 2:00, Isaiah will be there and they have a little, like you say, it's part of that, 60%, 40% of effective. Are you actually working, or are you,
Yeah.
building a relationship? And a lot of what we do has to be building a relationship, because plumbing is like orange juice. It's just a commodity, right? Anybody can change
Really
a
is.
toilet. If you spend 3 days training on how to change a toilet, you can do it as good as I can, and I've been doing it for 40 years. There's nothing to it.
Yeah.
But what kind of experience do I bring to that service? And like you said
And that's
about,
where the margin.
that's where the margin is. And like you said about whatever it was, Nordstrom's or whatever, like you walk into and they're paying somebody to play the piano live, and you know what I mean? There's, some gal there holding something. Would you like an hors d'oeuvre as you walk into whatever? Sure, thank you. And you're like, oh, I'm going to spend some money here because they're looking after me.
I pay attention to that stuff because I love sales and how all that works. And it's like, you feel like, wow, I'm walking through Nordstrom's, and you hear the music in the background, and you smell the perfume, and it makes you feel like buying something nice.
Yeah.
It really does.
It does,
So
right? Like, they know what they're
yeah,
doing. They're
yeah,
not just like, we got an extra 50 grand. Why don't you hire a keyboard player? And
yeah,
I don't know, see what happens. Like, they've tested it, as you know,
yeah,
it's somewhere. And like, everybody that hears that spends an extra 20% more in our stores. So
yeah,
it's worth it. So
yeah. So the last thing on this project here is you'll have a stubborn guy that says, well, I don't, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, you don't actually need a shop. You can work out of your house. So yeah, just cross that out. No 36,000s, pay yourself 75,000, use your beater truck, and you get down to about 150 bucks an hour, and you're broke. You don't have the tools. You can't fix your truck. And a lot of guys will say, well, that's like what the company I came from was like.
yeah,
And like, that's why we charge this, so that you can have a nice truck, so your truck's not going to break down. Like, I want my trucks to all be working well, so my plumbers can make good money,
yeah.
right?
Well,
So,
as you know, the truck's the most important tool you got. If you can't get to
100%.
the, I mean, we're a service-based business, which means you have to go to site no matter what you do. And if
Yeah,
your truck is garbage, and you phone up your customer and say, I know your toilet's flooding, or the sprinkler in your house, but my truck's broken, so I'll see you tomorrow. She'd be like, I'm going to call Bob Baker because I know he'll be here in 10 minutes.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you lost the customer because you didn't have a line item for truck repairs.
yeah. You let down your plumber. Your plumber's
Yeah,
depending on you
yeah.
to have a quality piece of equipment for him. So, yeah. So guys will say it doesn't cost this much, and yes, you could cross a lot of the stuff out, but then you got a ragtag company that's not doing well.
No, I agree.
So
We got 15 seconds left before it kicks us off.
let's do this
Last
again in
word.
a couple weeks.
Do a couple weeks.
Yeah.
we'll communicate offline and we'll set it up.
Sounds good.
All right. Stay on the
Awesome.
main floor, Brett, buddy. Stay on the main floor.
Awesome. Take care. Good to see you.
All right. Thanks, bud.